and God accepted his prayers. He says, who in the days of his flesh, means while he was here with us, he had offered up praise and supplications with strong crying and tears unto him that was able to save him from death, and was heard in that he feared. He was heard, means God heard his prayers. What does it mean, God heard? Does it mean God is deaf at any time? He's all-hearing God. He hears everything. He hears the whispers. Our secret thoughts he hears. What does it mean, God heard? It means God accepted.
Is Hebrews 5:7 teaching that God prevented Jesus from dying on the cross? To find the answer, we will first consider what this text does not mean, which is very easy to do. Let's look at what else the same author wrote in the same book. Chapter 2, verse 9. Because of the suffering of death, Jesus was crowned with glory and honor, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. Chapter 2, verse 14. Now since the children have flesh and blood in common, Jesus also shared in these, so that through death he might destroy the one holding the power of death, that is, the devil. Chapter 13, verse 20. Now may the God of peace, who brought up from the dead the great shepherd of the sheep through the blood of the eternal covenant, Jesus our Lord. In these three texts, it's clear that the author thought Jesus had died and risen from the dead. So when Hebrews 5:7 says that the prayers of Jesus were heard, we can know that the author did not mean God had rescued Jesus from being killed. Deedat and Muslim apologists who follow him are guilty of the cherry-picking fallacy, since they appeal to Hebrews 5:7 without considering what else the same author said in the same book. They would be the first to object if Christian apologists did something similar with the Quran. For example, Surah 19:33 portrays Jesus saying, "Peace be upon me the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I am raised alive." Now what if a Christian apologist claimed that the Quran agrees with the New Testament because it mentions the death and resurrection of Jesus in Surah 19? Such a claim would likewise be guilty of the cherry-picking fallacy, since those making it would ignore what the Quran and Islamic tradition say about Jesus elsewhere. However, this is precisely what Deedat did with Hebrews 5:7. He was terribly irresponsible in his handling of the text. Now that we know that Hebrews 5:7 does not mean Jesus was spared from death, we may ask what the author meant when he said Jesus' prayers were heard. Here are three important observations. First, the Greek term in this text translated heard means to give careful attention to. This term does not require that the one hearing will fulfill the request being made. When used in the same sense, the Supreme Court of a nation may agree to hear a certain case, but there's no guarantee it will rule in favor of the plaintiff. Second, what were the prayers and supplications of Jesus mentioned in this verse? Immediately before his arrest, Jesus prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Deedat mentioned the first half of Jesus' prayer while avoiding the second. Jesus' prayer was in essence, "Please deliver me from death, but if that's not part of your will, may your will and not mine be done." Third, Hebrews 5:7 is best understood when considered in its context. The book of Hebrews was written to Jewish Christians who were considering a return to Judaism because of the persecution they were suffering as Christians. Throughout the book, the author provides several reasons why they should remain in the Christian faith. In the immediate context of chapter 5, verses 7 and 8, he says Jesus is a high priest who can sympathize with them since he also suffered. He asked God to spare him from death if that was his will, but learned what it is to obey God even when God's will included his suffering. Thus, for true followers of Jesus, God's purposes and desires take priority over our own. In summary, we've seen that Ahmad Deedat's interpretation of Hebrews 5:7 involves an irresponsible handling of the text, and in fact was exactly the opposite of what the author had intended to communicate.